In this video, I want to show you exactly how to self-host N8N. And when I say self-host, I mean literally on your PC. So you won't have to spend money on any VPS, on any cloud services and infrastructures. You'll be able to run N8N directly from your local PC, which means that on the con side, it will need to be on in order for N8N to be able to work. But that's pretty much it. If your computer is on, you'll be able to run stuff on N8N. I'll also show you how to connect N8N to the world by setting up a cheap $5 per year domain so that you'll be able to connect to services like Google and other services that require a connection that is secure, right? If we're running N8N locally on your PC, by default, it will be boxed into its own infrastructure. When you set up N8N this way, and in the way I will show you, you'll be able to connect to these additional services because they will be able to speak to your local PC, so to speak. But that's pretty much it in terms of setup. You'll be able to run your own large language models. You'll be able to choose exactly how N8N operates, and you'll be literally running N8N on your own local infrastructure. So with that said, let's get right into it. What we're going to need right here is this self-starter AI, self-hosted AI starter kit, which included in it has the following tools. So there is the self-hosted N8N. There's Olama, which is the large language model we'll use. There's Quadrant, which eventually you could use for high performance vector store. And there is Postgres SQL, which is what we're going to use as our database. So this will also be handled directly within the setup that we will have. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So if you go to this URL here, which is docs.n8n.io/hosting/starter-kit/ai-starter-kit, you'll be able to scroll down here and head to the GitHub repository to clone the repo and get started. In addition to downloading this, which we'll do in a second here, you will also need to install Docker Desktop. So this is the software that will allow you to run N8N and everything else within your computer. And this is, in a way, I think the best way I found this to be explained is that you have a shipping container. So you have a container right here, shipping container or shipping ship, I guess, whatever that is called. And then on top of it, you have different containers, right? So this is container number 1. And then you have another container, and then you have another one, and so on and so forth. And each of these containers are, by definition, and what they think is that they are hosted individually. They think that they are the only thing running on the system because they are self-contained, right? However, there could be technically unlimited amount of containers on top of this ship, because as long as it can handle them in terms of resources, it should be able to have stuff installed in these different containers. And this is what we're going to be looking at when it comes to this container here. One other important thing is volume. So over here, each container will probably need to have its own volume if you want it to have specific, so let's undo that. If you want your container to be able to host data, to hold data, it will need to have a volume attached to it. So a volume is just a fancy way of saying memory, essentially, because if there is no volume, when we restart our shipping container, when we restart Docker, there will be no data that is persistent. And if you've built something in terms of workflows in container 2, you don't want it to just disappear just because you restarted that Docker container, right? So this is why we need volumes. One other thing I want to mention before we dive deep into this is this images right here. So an image is just a way to sort of preload something that you want to add to a specific container. So we just use that. We can have an image right there. So what this will do is it will allow the container to know exactly what to put into it, what to put inside it. In this case, the image will contain N8N. It will contain the other stuff, right? Olama, Quadrant, Postgres. So everything else that is inside this image will get installed on this container that is hosted on Docker with its own memory or volume. So that is essentially what we are building. And just like you have container 2 right here, you could then have other stuff happening in container 3, container 1, etc., etc. The thing I mentioned earlier is that since this container is, for all intents and purposes, self-sufficient, it cannot really connect with services like Google Drive, for example, right? Or other services that you might want to connect with. And the essence of N8N is that it is connecting to and from a bunch of other services. However, there is this sort of wall between the world right here and the container where you're building, which is why we're going to find a way to set up something that can literally break through this wall and allow this to communicate. So that's one thing we'll also set up in this video. But anyway, I think enough theory. Let's dive right in and start with the N8N and other items and their installation. So over here, you have all the information, and for the installation, this is what we will need. Again, make sure you have downloaded Docker Desktop. So if you go here and you go to Desktop, download Docker Desktop, you choose your version. So in my case, for example, I'm on Windows AMD 64, and just download that. I'm going to stop this. Once you download it, you just install it as a normal executable. And as you can see, I have no containers, I have a few images here. Okay, so let me just delete these. So I'll start from scratch. Give this a few seconds. And under volumes, I'm also going to delete everything else as well. So now I'm fresh with no containers, no volumes, and no images. No builds. And here I have some MCP toolkits. Yeah, that I might have removed as well. So I'm literally starting from scratch. So here, you can either use the terminal directly within Docker. So over here, which is the place where my head was at, you have terminal. And once you click on that, you get access to a terminal right here. Alternatively, you can also use your normal command line on Windows to access terminal. So that can also be done as well. So I put myself there again. So what I'm going to do is go to GitHub right here, and I'm going to copy these commands. So here we have cloning the repository, running N8N using Docker Compose. For AMD GPU users on Linux, let's see here, for everyone else. In my case, this is what I want for NVIDIA GPU users. So this is me. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go to Docker. I'm just going to paste this in here. So if we have a look here, what we're going to do is clone the GitHub repository. Then we're going to create a directory, or change to it, I guess, which will be called self-hosted AI starter kit. Then this will copy the environment, like the env file, where we will need to update the secrets and passwords. And then we're going to start Docker Compose profile up. So we're going to start that specific profile. So let's hit enter. Let's see what we get. So for some reason we got an error here, does not exist. Okay, fair enough. So this is still running. So the problem is that this file didn't exist. So when we try to change directly to self-hosted AI starter kit, that did not exist. So let's see what happens here. This still seems to be downloading all we need right here. So it's running and it's completed 24, 25, almost 30 out of 40 files. So as you can see, this is pulling 1.1 gigabytes, 109 megabytes, 286, and then 81 megabytes. So I'll just pause this and then we'll keep going once this completes downloading. All right, sweet. So this took a few minutes. If we look here, took around, like the longest one took 239 seconds, and that is, what is that, 300, so it's a bit less than 5 minutes, I guess. So it's running, it's installing stuff right now and all that. It's pulling stuff, so it's doing its thing in terms of the installation. So at this stage, there's only, I guess, nothing to pretty much do instead of just waiting. In the meantime, one thing that might be of interest is the fact of whether you should go for local hosting or not whilst this is running. So there are pros and cons to it in terms of, or when compared to running it in a cloud or even in a self-hosted on a VPS server. So what I want to do is just compare a bit and maybe help you decide whether it makes sense for you to go for local hosting or not. So one of the pros of going local is obviously the cost savings. You don't have to rely on subscription fees. You don't have to pay every single month or every single year. You can just run it on your computer as need be. There's no additional resources that you might not be using that you are still paying for. The second thing is that you can fully customize it. It can get technical, which is one con, but you have much more control over the way everything works, the customization of things. Other thing is data privacy, and I know this is a big thing for many people. There's the concern when it comes to these large language models. Where is my data going? Who is seeing my data? With local models, things are on your machine. There's, if you want, you don't even have to communicate with third-party sources. So there is the focus on data privacy, which allows you to keep things hosted on your own machine. There's performance. So if you have a good machine, you can have access to all the local resources you need without any latency, because things are literally staying on your machine. So it's much quicker if your machine can handle it. And I would say for some things, it also works without an internet connection if you want. Again, since things are on your local machine, you could have things that are just running and you don't need an internet connection, but your system still needs to be on for it to function. So those are some things to consider. A few, I guess, points on the cons side, just as this just finished installing right here, is that number one, you need to handle backups, you need to handle updates, you need to ensure that things are working as expected. If things go wrong, you have no one to rely on in order to fix this. You need to fix it yourself, which also means that things can get technical very quickly, which in some cases can be an additional burden when it comes to security. If you don't know what you're doing, you are leaving your system exposed. If someone wanted to get into the system, it might be easier if they know what they're doing compared to something where other people are managing the security aspect. So security can be both a pro and a con in this case. The other thing I would mention is that you are limited by the hardware that you have. So if you have limited hardware resources, you might run into issues. So that's another thing to keep in mind. But anyway, let's go back to this. So here, this seems to have installed everything right here. If I go to my PC, let's see, where's this installing? I believe it was in users. So colon users, Kevin, self-hosted N8N starter kit. Yep. So here, as you can see, we have the self-hosted N8N AI starter kit, right? So we have the assets, we have the N8N, we have the shared, we have the .env file. So that is pretty much all we need. One important file that we have here also is this Docker compose. So this will be one thing that we'll need to have a look at in a second. If I go back here to containers, you can see that now we have this container installed right here as well, which contains all the 5 items that or the 4 items that we installed. We have the Postgres, the Quadrant, the Olama, and the N8N. If I just go here to local:5678, I should immediately be able to access N8N. So here, this is how I set up my owner account. So here, I can set up an email immediately. I can set up my name, first, last name, and then my password. So let's put in a password. And that's it next. So technically, we are good to go. We can start from scratch. And we have our own N8N that is running on our local host right here. We can hit start from scratch. And we can, technically, if we wanted to start building. So trigger manually, and then we can connect, I don't know, set. Let's put in a name, 123, and let's put in a last name, 456, and we can execute this. So as you can see, this is now running as expected. We can also use a large language model since we have installed Olama. So here we go to AI agent. We can go to chat model, and we can go to Olama, and so let's see why that is not showing up. So this should be here. Olama latest, Olama pull Olama. Do we need to run that again? Let's see. exited. Okay, so that should be available, I would think. So chat model, Olama. Okay, let's hit save. Base URL is da 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 da. Okay, let's see why that is not working. So if we go back here, Olama, quick start. Let me have a look at this. Cool. So apparently, even though this is installed and I verified that this is working by going to my local host and double checking that Olama is running, which it is right here, I still might need to install a model, which as far as I know, it was automatically included when I tried this the other time, but let's try. Let's paste this in here, hit enter, and this is now pulling a different model right here, because the issue I was running it, if I go to, let's see, I was looking at some videos here. If I go to my workflow right here, for some reason, this was not finding anything, right? So there was no model here. There was nothing being found when I tried to add Olama right here. So what I'm going to try and do is actually download a model in here, and then I'll be able to see whether that loads up the right model in my N8N instance. So that's downloaded. If I go back here, go to chat model, Olama, create new credential. So this is 11434. It should be that. So let's put this into Cloud. So let's just say I still can't connect to Olama. And what I'm also going to show it is that this has now, or was supposed to pull an Olama model. All right, so this is saying it needs that, Olama 11434. So let's go back here, let's try and connect that. All right, sweet, that's connected. And yes, awesome, now we get that. Okay, so the problem was the connection right here. So now, if we hit save and we trash this right here, delete that, we have Olama latest than 1 billion parameters. Awesome. So now we can also give this a prompt. So let's add an option. Let's say your assistant that comes up with a joke about a person's name. Here, I'm going to execute the previous nodes. Okay, let's execute this. So we get a name, which will be Kevin. Let's put in a last name. Let's execute that. And now we can connect that together. So now we just put in the name as the user prompt. So now if we execute this, we should be able to get a joke about that name. Since this is running locally, the latency thing comes in. As you can see, it works slower than other models, even though it is hosted locally. So there's a bunch of stuff that this is dependent on. So here we get the joke. Why did Kevin bring a letter to the party? Because he heard the drinks were on the house. Yeah, stupid Kevin. So here, this is working as expected. If we were to go to Docker, type in Docker compose down, this will stop the container where our resources are running. So if I now go and try and refresh this, this will be down. And this is what I mentioned before. Your computer needs always to be on for this to run, and Docker needs to be running as well. If not, then you will not be able to obviously access your N8N. So here what I'm going to do is put in Docker compose up -d. And actually I'm not even sure why -d comes in. So while it is going back up, why does Docker compose up -d? What does the minus d do in that. So I'm just curious about that as well. So this stands for detached mode. Runs the containers in the background, returns control of your terminal immediately. Containers keep running even after you close terminal. Without that, you run containers in the foreground. Your terminal shows all the live logs. If you close the terminal or press Ctrl C, the containers stop. Okay, cool. Good to know. So now this managed to get back up here, because if we go back to Docker, this is now up and running. So this is working as expected. So this is fine. However, let's say we want to take this to the next step and we want to save the joke, right? It's not enough to generate the joke. We want to save it somewhere. And that is where we need a database. And as part of this AI self-starter kit, we get access to this Postgres database. So here we can do a bunch of things. We can delete rows or tables. We can execute a command. We can insert rows in a table, insert or update, select rows and update rows in a table. What I want to do is create a table in my database. So let's just do this on its own for now. And what I'm going to do is I want to execute an SQL command. First of all, I need to create a new credential. So here we get the host is localhost, database is Postgres, user is Postgres, password is empty. And I'm pretty sure that will not, we get some errors right here. I believe the way to solve that would be to go to our environment variables. And here, by default, we get this stuff, which I believe is what we need to do. So Postgres user should be root. Postgres password should be password. And the database is that N8N? No. So let's take this to Claude. Let's take a screenshot. And what I believe we also need to do is just figure out some stuff here. So if we go to Docker and type in PS, we should get a bunch of stuff here. And what we're interested in is this right here. So here we got the image, which is the Postgres 16 Alpine. And what we want is probably this name right here, self-hosted AI starter kit Postgres-1. So let me just copy this. Copy. And let's go back here to N8N before we try that in Claude. So database, let's put in that. It might also be the, not quite sure. So that didn't work. So let's just try that. And for database, let's put in N8N again. We'll check there are no spaces here. And let's just hit save. Okay, so that seems to have connected. So now the test is if we go here and we try and create an SQL statement to create a table. So let's go here. And in Claude, I'm going to say, give me an SQL statement to create a table in Postgres that contains two columns, name and joke. Let's say both are required and both are strings. All right, cool. So we have the SQL statement, create table jokes, name is a varchar, not null, and joke is text, not null. So what's the difference? Okay, so varchar is restricted to 255 characters, fair. Text is unlimited text, and not null makes them both required. Great. Alternatively, we could go with something fixed, but let's just copy this. Let's go back to Postgres, hit execute, and now we got a success equals true. So technically, we now have a tables called jokes. So now we could connect to Postgres here. And let's insert a row in a table. The table should be jokes, great. So there's a bunch of other tables there as well. But what we're interested in is jokes, awesome. And now we got name and joke, right? As we dictated with that SQL statement. So that is working as expected. So now what I'm going to do is just run this once more. So I'll have some data and then I'll be able to save the information in my database. So here output will be the joke and the name will come in from the edit nodes, right? So this is what we're doing here. We're going to execute this and now we got the success. So this means that we got the information stored in our database. What I also want to see is if I can select rows from a table, delete. So let's just confirm that that got created. So this would be create table. But let's now get the results of a table. So let's go to ChatGPT and let's now say, that's great. How, give me an SQL statement to retrieve the contents of this table. So select all from jokes, pretty straightforward. Go back here and let's execute that. Awesome. So now we have the joke right here. If we were to run this again with another name, so let's change this to John. We execute that. So we should have another joke inserted. It's again about the leather, not very creative. So maybe we need to give it a better system prompt. But the point is, did that save as expected? And as you can see, it did, because we have the second entry right here. Now, this is a bit, I would say, impractical, right? If you're trying to check this, like it helps to have a visual element to be able to check what is in your database. So that is what I want to show you how to do next. It's not part of this AI self-starter kit that N8N is offering, but there is a way to get a visual representation of your whole Postgres database. So let me show you how to do that. So there's this thing called pgadmin. If I open this up, so this is the most popular and feature-rich open source. Let's see what it says here. Database in the world, right? Maybe used on Linux. Okay, and it gives you sort of a graphical user interface for your database. And this is what we want. So we can see the names and jokes we have in our table. The way to install this, without getting into a lot of details, is to run a command like this. So if I go to my notepad here, we can run docker with pgadmin, define the ports, define the email, define the password, and then there's some additional parameters here. So I'm just going to copy this, go to my docker here, my terminal, paste that in there, and okay, there was some error, but now it's trying to download all the files needed there, which is great. So now, if this works, it will download everything we need to have this pgadmin installed. What this will also do, if it works successfully, is it will create different containers for that. So at the moment, we only have this one container, right, which is the self-hosted AI starter kit. What we want, once this finishes installing, is to have another container on Docker with this pgadmin. So if we go back to what we had at the beginning with Excalibur, in container 2 or container 1, whatever, we have the AI starter kit. In container 1, we'll now have the pgadmin database or graphical user interface. What we will then want to do is get them to talk to each other so that this will be able to display what is in this database right here, or something along those lines. So I'll go back here. Okay, this is saying that no error is there, and here I can see pgadmin added as a container as well, which is amazing. So here, if we go to that, we're able to get to the access screen of pgadmin. And if you remember from this, we set the email to be that, and we set the password to be that. So now hit login. Awesome. And I'm now inside. What I want to do now is be able to connect to that specific database. So here I'm going to add a new server. And this is where I need to go back to my notes. So here, let's see. The name can be anything. So let's call this Postgres. Then for the connection under host name, we need to put in host.internal or host.docker.internal. So this will allow us to connect directly to the Postgres container, right? Which is, it's a way to denote that. You can leave the port as is, 5422. The database is Postgres. The username is root, and the password is password. So this is the same thing that we connected to right here. So the username is root, the password is password, and I believe that's pretty much it. So let's hit save. All right, so here we have an error. So let's just copy this. And before we do, let's just confirm. So host.docker.internal 5432 maintenance database is Postgres. Okay, let's see. Let's go to Claude. And I was going to put this in there. So this is great. I'm now trying to connect to the Postgres database from pgadmin. However, when trying to add the server, I'm running into this issue. All right, but you're running inside of a Docker container. Try the host name options. Localhost, Postgres. Okay, let's give it this situation here. So maybe it can give us a better answer. So this is the Docker situation. As a separate container, great. Since it's running its own container, you need to connect using your host, not local. Okay. You had this right. So what are we changing? Host.docker.internal. Isn't that what we just said? You had this right. Port 5432. So what is it actually suggesting that we change? Because I don't see anything different there. So host.docker.internal. Post 5432. Maintenance database Postgres. Username Postgres. Password. Just type this in again. Password. Save. No. Or use that as the default. Let's try that. Save. So we're still running into an error there. So we type in docker ps. Do we get the, yeah, pgadmin? Okay, let's go back to Claude. Tried the solutions above, still running into issues. This is the docker ps output. Check your Docker Compose. Look for the Postgres service and see if it has a port section like this. Okay, so let's go to Docker Compose. Let's open with Notepad. And let's just paste this in there. Okay, it doesn't have a port section, which means it's not exposing port 5432. Here's the fixed. Okay, so we need to edit this Docker Compose. Open with Notepad. Add a port section to your Postgres service. So where we have Postgres. All right, their services. We need to change this to this. Okay. So here it's saying, let's add this line under restart. All right, let's save that. Then restart your containers. Okay. And then we try again in pgadmin. So let's restart. Okay, for some reason that didn't quite work. Docker compose down. Docker. Why not? It will not find the dash indicator. Let's see. Docker dash compose. Down. Okay. Not sure what's happening there. Let's exit out of that. I think Docker is down now. Let's see. No, it's not. So docker-compose down. Okay, I think there is some error in the file that we edited. So if we go here, open with Notepad, and wherever we did this line, I don't think, should it have that line? Let's see. I would think that is where the issue is coming from. So let's go back to Claude. Running into issues when trying to restart Docker after I made changes to the YAML file. Check line 58. Yep. So let's go back here. This is the YAML file. So wrong indentation. Huh. Okay. Also here I'm seeing a few commented parts which I think were left over from my last installation. Anyway, so here let's look at this again. Wrong indentation. So does that need to be let's find it again. Postgres port. Does that need to be correct indentation? 4 spaces. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Interesting. Try this again. Okay. Needs to be 4 spaces. Good to know. Docker compose up minus D. Okay, so let's run that again. Let's go back here and let's try this once more. Hit save. Is that a good thing? Saving, saving, saving. Connection timed out. Okay, that's not good. So let's go back to host.docker.internal. Save. Okay, so that now worked. So actually, we just needed to add that information to our Postgres section in the Docker Compose YAML section. So here, the point is that we want to find, let's see, N8N, schemas. We just want to find that jokes table. So here we have tables. Do we have jokes? Yes, we do. And if we right click and view all rows, awesome. We see these 2 rows right here. So there's Kevin and there's John, right? Now for some reason, okay, yeah, perfect. We get all that. And why did John bring to the, whatever it is, a letter to the party? Great. So if we were to add another joke in N8N, we should be able to get that information saved in Postgres, which means we can also see it right here. So let's just do that. Let me just close some windows here. Let's close that. Where is my N8N? Let me just close this. And this. And this. Found N8N here. So let's refresh this. Let's add the, or change the system prompt with a joke about the person's name and surname. So hopefully we'll get something slightly different. And here, let's put in Oli. So save, run. Let's see what we get. We can close that. And now that executed successfully. So if we were to go back here and hit, I don't know if there's a, I'm sure there's a refresh button somewhere, but let's hit Control R. Okay, I have to go back here. So servers, N8N, public jokes, right click view, all rows. Yep, we got that. because she heard it was an oily good time. Get it? Like olive oil. Awesome. So we get the joke inserted in our database right there. And that is how we have our own self-hosted database as well. Now, let's speak about connecting this to the world, because over here, we could add a webhook, right? However, the problem, this still kept the same information from the last time I installed this. So let me just clear this. Okay, awesome. So I cleared what I had before and I can now proceed. So now via the webhook, you will see that we get this localhost URL, right? Which means that this is fine if we want to access this locally on our computer. The problem is that if we want to connect it to other services, we want someone to send data to and from N8N, they will not be able to do it simply because this URL, localhost URL, is not available on the internet, on the World Wide Web. So what we need to find a way to allow secure connections to connect to this. And this is where Cloudflare comes in. So we go to Cloudflare and just, actually, I'm going incognito, Cloudflare, sign in. And this will allow you to create an account on Cloudflare, which is free. And then you will be able to essentially create what is known as a tunnel, which will be the secure bridge between the world and your container, right? That is what we're going to do. If I go to Cloudflare and log in, accept, login. Okay, continue. For this to work, you will need to have a domain, right? So over here, a few days ago, I bought a domain name, which is kevinsweirddomain.win. Yeah. So this was like a $5 domain, and it was the first thing that came to mind. Don't judge me. So what I did is I bought that domain for like $5, and then you can also connect a domain if you already have one, right? So you can either transfer domains right here, or you can register a domain. You hit register, you can just select a domain or search for it and then buy it there. Once you have that, what's important is that you go to this zero trust right here, which is where we're going to set up the whole thing. And once you do, there's network and there are tunnels right here. So this is where you need to be. Here, I already had my N8N tunnel, so I'm just going to delete that. So we can start from scratch. So this is the screen that you see when you come here. I'm going to hit add a tunnel. I'm going to select Cloudflare right here. And this is where I'm going to give it a name. So let's just give it a name like N8N YouTube. I'm going to save the tunnel. And now I have a few options right here. I have the ability to choose, in my case, Windows or Docker. In my case, I'm just going to choose Windows 64-bit. And what I need to do here is just hit that. So that will download a small file. I need to run the installer. So I'm going to do just that. More info, run. Accept that. Then I need to open command prompt as an administrator and run the following command. So here, as you can see, this is searching for any connectors. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go to cmd run as admin. And I'm going to just paste that in there. And it's already installed. If you are running, you can point it to multiple origins, avoiding to need run. Okay. Otherwise, if you are really sure, you can do Cloudflare service uninstall. Okay, cool. So Cloudflare service uninstall. So that should stop what we had before, I guess. And then I can try paste that again. Okay, sweet. So let's see what happens here. Awesome. And as you can see, that is now showing right here, whereas it wasn't before. Right, so now this is connected to my computer. So each time I switch on my computer, this will now allow me to have that bridge between the world and my computer. I'm going to hit next, which is in the bottom right. And here I have the final screen with some pieces of data I need to fill in. So first of all, I need to give this a host name. So let's give this N8N YouTube. I need to choose my domain. So this will be n8nyoutube.kevinsweirddomain.win, right? You can leave path as empty, so that's fine. And let me see if there's anything else. Yep. what we need to do here is just choose HTTP. And now we just need to give the local URL. So here, if I go to my N8N, if I manage to find that, where are we? Excalibur, my workflow is great. We just need that. So localhost colon 5678. So go back to Cloudflare, paste that in there. Service URL is not valid. We need to remove that. Do we need to remove that maybe? Yep, I think we do. So let's hit complete setup. Okay, successfully saved settings here. So what we finally need to do here is just one more thing. So here we need to add 2 pieces of data to our YAML file, which are these right here. We need to add a webhook URL, and we need to add this N8N protocol. So I'm just going to copy this, go back to my Docker Compose, going to open with Notepad, and here I'm just going to add these 2. So here, let me actually just copy this, so it will have the same formatting. We'll have let me zoom in as well, the webhook URL, which is that, and we will have the N8N protocol. So that will be HTTPS right there. And the webhook URL needs to be mydomain.com. So in my case, it was Kevin's, I believe, Kevin's weird domain dot win. But let's double check that. Webhook URL, paste, and let's save that. And let's see what happens. So we need to now restart this again. So docker-compose-down, actually not D, down. And then we have docker-compose up -D. So if this works, go back to N8N here, we'll be able to get a different version of this webhook. So let's see this in a second. So this is now restarting. So let's refresh this. Give it a few seconds. If we go back here and type in webhook, as you can see, this is now replaced the localhost domain we had there. Also know that we are still on the localhost version here, right? But if we go to this, let's see, what did I call it? Because this will also allow us to log in directly to this dot my domain, Kevin's weird domain.win directly. Let's see. Yes, perfect. So now we should be able to log in from anywhere on the internet because Cloudflare is allowing us to have that tunnel available. So if I type in that, and I believe that was the password. Yes, perfect. This was created today. And now we can access this right here, as you can see. So all of that is working as expected. So we have 2 versions of this. We have the full domain there, and we have the version which is the local host. So it's either one or the other if we are on the computer where Docker is running. If not, if we are on the internet from any other computer, we just use the public domain. What I'm also going to test is the ability to connect a webhook to this. So if we go to webhook and just grab that, I want to pass along a name right here. So let's just test this. If I execute the workflow, so now this is waiting for a test URL, and I just type in name equals Kevin. Okay, so for some reason this couldn't be reached. So let's see, why is that? Webhook test. Okay. Get, so this is now listening. Okay. So if I run this, it might be that I need the, think about it, I might need the whole subdomain. So I think that URL might be wrong here. It might be N8N YouTube dot. I think that makes sense. So N8N YouTube.kevinsweirddomain.win, etc. And then I say name equals Kevin. Oh yeah, so that is it. So what I did wrong, as you can see, we got the data right here. What I did wrong in my YAML file is here I need to provide that subdomain. So it was N8N YouTube.kevinsweirddomain.win. So let's just restart right here. Docker compose down. Docker compose up -d. Give this a second. If I go back here and refresh, give it a second. Let's go back here. Okay, now we got the proper webhook URL. So now, if I listen for an event, we get the webhook was started immediately. Great. So going back to what we're trying here, what I want to do is set the name right here, which will come from the webhook. So if we look at the information here under JSON, we get the, I mean, we didn't get anything here, but let's just disconnect that, listen, run that, and then let's put in name equals Kevin. So now if we go back here, we should be able to connect the name directly to the set module. So here the name will come from the webhook. So now we can connect to the world through a webhook. So let's execute the webhook. Let's put in, and under name equals, oops, name equals, I don't know, Joanne. This starts the webhook. This starts the automation. And then we should get that record inserted in our Postgres database. Cool. So let's go here. I'm curious if there's a way to restart this without refreshing the page. Reset layout. Let me just ask Claude. How do I refresh this to get the latest data? Sure, there's an easier way than just hitting Control R. Claude is taking its time here. All right, sweet. Re-execute the query. Use the play button in the toolbar. Where is that? Okay, cool. All right, sweet. So we got Joanne right here. Why did Joanne bring Gallagher to the party? It's always the same. She wanted to take her social life to new heights. All right, sweet. I mean, pretty shitty dad jokes, but yeah. And in a second, I'll also show you how to have different models there as well, instead of the Olama basic model that we are using right here, which is the 3.2 latest. So this is working with the webhook. We can also send data back to the webhook. So if we wanted to, we can respond to the webhook and we just say, I don't know, joke has been saved to the database. And here, we're just going to respond using the webhook node. So now, we're to execute this and rerun the query. So copy this, listen, and then put in a name, which is equal to Daniel. Nothing is happening there for some reason. Why is that? So I got name equals Daniel. Did I not connect that before I ran it? Let's try again. Refresh. Okay, joke has been saved to the database. That was very fast though. Okay, it was very fast, yeah. Why did Daniel bring a letter to the party? So could it be that the first time this whole llama runs, it takes the longest time, I guess? So if we put name equals to Jack. Yeah, joke has been saved to the database. And we got a joke about Jack. Cool. You want to take his friendship to new heights. All right, fair. So now we go back here and hit play again. We get all those records included there. So that seems to be working as expected. The final part I wanted to mention is how to add different models, because this is fine, right? We're using a llama, but let's say we want to have something different. So llama, we go to that site, llama actually, not just llama. We have access to all the open source models available. So if we go to models right here at the top, we have DeepSeek, we have Gemma, we have Quen, we have Mistral as well. So let's have a look at Mistral. So there's one model here, which is the 7B, which is 4.4 gigabytes. So all you had to do if you wanted to download that is copy this, and I'll show you what to do with it in a second. In my case, I'm just going to go to DeepSeek and let's just download a quick R1 1.5. And let's copy, there's one which is 404 gigabytes, which is pretty insane. How about a terabyte? Anyway, let's go get the 1.5 billion parameters. So I'm going to copy this. And what I'm going to do is go back to Docker. And I'm going to type in this. So it's ollama, I believe. Let's see. Ollama pull. And then just paste in the name of the model. And that should be pretty much it. So this is not recognized. Yes, the thing I did wrong is I need to go to ollama here. Need to go to exec, and I need to type this in here. So this is where I need to type that ollama pull, and then just paste in that. So this will pull the specific model directly to my ollama part of the container, I guess. So this is downloading that 1.1 gig file, and then I should be able to see that immediately in my N8N instance. So we'll give this some time to load and to do whatever it needs to do here. And here we got success, writing manifest, success. So now let's go back to N8N, let's hit save. I don't know if I need to restart, but no. Immediately you will see that we have access to DeepSeek R1. So now let's run this once more. And actually, I think, yeah, that was a previous version because there was no webhook in that. So I'm curious if I go back here and can I just save this and potentially not lose out on that webhook? Yeah, I think I can. So if I refresh this, yep, I get the latest version. I was just working on the same workflow from two separate browser windows. So here we go to ollama chat model, should be able to select DeepSeek, and now the joke should be coming from DeepSeek. So in this case, if I say the name is, let's just have a different name, right? So let's copy the URL here. Listen for event. Let's put in the name is equal to Albert. Hit enter. Yeah, for some reason, the first time we run this, it seems to be stopping there. But let's run this again. Yeah, as you can see, it's taking some time now because this is a bigger model. I believe it's also a thinking model. Yeah, so you can see we're getting all that. So now we're getting a different caliber of a joke, right? In this case, we're getting the thought process right there. So if I go back to my database right here and hit play, we get the name, which is Albert, and then we get the whole thing right here. So the user mentioned Albert as the response. I need to figure out why they said that. They're playing a game. I should consider if there's another possible meaning. Sometimes people joke about famous scientists. I love how like the overthinking within this model. Okay, cool. He's a famous psychist known for the theory of relativity. Cool. So for some reason, does this not understand we want a joke? Yeah, pretty weird. Anyway, but it did use DeepSeek R1. You are a helpful assistant. It comes up with a joke about a person's name and surname. So let's make this a bit clear. The joke should be about Albert. Let's run it again. So still running. We go to the database, not that one. And run that once more. Okay, so now it understood. So being a bit more explicit was important. I'm trying to come up with a joke where the first letter is A, which corresponds to Albert. Okay. Alex Johnson, I think it works, it's clear. So what is the joke? Yeah, anyway, too much overthinking happening there. This is working as expected. So now we have a full system that is locally hosted, that is running DeepSeek right there, that is saving to a Postgres database that is open to the world through a webhook right there. And that's pretty much it. So, yep, that was all I had. It's our tutorial right here to allow you or to show you how to connect that and how to build it directly on your machine. I hope you found that useful. So if you did, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss future videos. In the meantime, let me know what you think about that, if you have any comments or questions. And I would love to get some thoughts on your end in terms of the videos you'd like to see next, so I can create stuff that is helpful and valuable for you. In the meantime, I hope you have a great day, and I'll speak to you soon.